Well, human beings, PowerGamer here. Legends tell of a bygone era when the key to true happiness was paved by a road that was not to be walked, but to be driven, and it was not meant to be traveled alone. No, assistance would be required to make this great journey. And what was this adventure like? Well, Mario Kart Double Dash is anything to go off of pure insanity.
Mario Kart Double Dash, twice the fun, twice the pain. Probably one of the most beloved entries in the Mario Kart series. Almost every game is somebody's favorite, keyword being almost, but Double Dash really does stand above the rest in terms of popularity. But that wasn't always the case. By this point, we were 3 entries into the Mario Kart series, and each one was one of the best-selling games on their respective console. It was clear Nintendo had struck gold with arguably the most popular multiplayer game of all time, so after the release of the GameCube, they quickly got to work. It was first shown off at E3 2001 via a 7-second video clip of Mario and Luigi driving in an endless void. Well, this game sure looks basic, but hey, it still has better graphics than Bubsy 3D. Yeah, this was clearly just an early proof of concept, and the working title at the time was just Mario Kart. You know, I'm kinda surprised they ended up changing it later on, but don't worry, the next 2 games will be able to be just as lazy. The actual game was shown off later at E3 2003, alongside the proper title, Mario Kart Double Dash, which had a bunch of new features, including the ability to have 2 characters in 1 cart. The development team wanted the game to be extremely accessible so that new players could easily enjoy it, while old players would still have something to look forward to, so the chief designer of the game, Kiyoshi Mizuki, decided to make the gameplay as simple as possible. They discussed the idea of the game being able to connect to the Game Boy Advance, but this was ultimately excluded since they agreed it wouldn't really suit that kind of thing. After E3, the game was shown off at a couple more press conferences before releasing to the public on November 7th, 2003 in Japan and the rest of the world only a couple weeks later. Like the other games, it was one of the best-selling titles on the console, with 6.88 million copies sold, making it second only to Super Smash Bros. Melee for the best-selling GameCube game. Now, reception was pretty solid, though there were a few sources that found the game to be a bit disappointing after the 6-year gap between this and 64. Hey, you people had something to hold you over, give it a break. But of course, over time, this game's reputation would grow tremendously, even more so than that of the other Mario Kart games. As I've said before, Mario Kart is one of the most nostalgia-biased video game franchises ever. The vast majority of people say their favorite Mario Kart game is either whatever the newest one is at the time, or whichever one they grew up with. 90s kids will say Mario Kart 64, 2000s kids will say Mario Kart Wii, wrong people will say Super Mario Kart, you get the point. But Double Dash is the rare exception to that rule. Even some people who didn't grow up with this game will say it's the best one in the series. But why is that? Well, I think that's because Mario Kart is a series that gradually evolves with every new entry rather than reinventing itself each time. Some video game franchises like Sonic the Hedgehog, for example, will try and do completely new things with every new game, but others like, say, Animal Crossing will take what was already established in the previous titles and just kind of build on it from there. Mario Kart is one of those, with the exception of Super Circuit, because that's going from a 3D console to a 2D console. Every new Mario Kart game can be seen as a general upgrade from the one that came before it. There's some things that only apply to specific titles, but for the most part, each game is just the previous one in the series, but with better controls and some new features. So the older ones kinda get left behind. Once Wii came out, it effectively replaced DS, then 7 effectively replaced Wii, 8 effectively replaced 7, and 8 Deluxe completely replaced 8 because, well, duh. So the only one most people will go back to is the one they grew up playing, not necessarily because it's better than the others, but because of nostalgia. Double Dash, however, is the only one that this doesn't really apply to, and that's largely because of how unique it is. It's the only Mario Kart game that really did try something completely different and was never done again. So a lot of people will return to it, but even people who didn't grow up with it will want to give it a try for that reason.
What are my thoughts on this game, however? Well, as I've said before, this was actually the very first video game I ever played in my entire life. You know those little N64 GameCube kiosks they used to have set up at, like, McDonald's or some other place? Well, they had one of those set up at my dentist's office, and I have very vague memories of playing this game before a couple of my appointments when I was young. And when I say vague, I mean very vague, because literally all I remember is what the controller looked like and a couple of the characters I picked. That is pretty much it, because the thing stopped working when I was around 5. Either way, this game holds a pretty special place in my heart, so I made sure it was the very first game I got alongside my GameCube. And okay, I got it alongside Wind Waker, but I still played this one first. And I had quite a bit of fun with it, though I never actually did go through and unlock everything. Is this really worthy of being considered the best Mario Kart game ever, or is that just because it stands out the most? Let's see.
We actually get a small opening cutscene showing off a bunch of the characters, and this is the only game in the entire series to have that, so already we're standing out in a great way. After that, we get our title screen, select the Grand Prix, and can pick our characters. Yes, you heard that correctly, characters. This is one of the 2 main defining features of Double Dash. That subtitle wasn't just being cute, you can select 2 characters to race with instead of just 1. Now each character has a partner, and they're split in pairs on the select screen, but you're free to select any 2 characters you want. Now some people would argue it's better to pick the 2 partners, but I say that's boring. I always pick 2 completely unrelated characters, and the weirder sweeter the combination, the better. Though there is a second reason I do this, but we'll get to that in a bit. Every character from the last two games is back, but we have a ton of new ones, most of which are holdovers from the Mario Sports games in the N64. We have Mario and Luigi, obviously, Peach and Daisy. This truly was the beginning of Daisy actually making a name for herself. Yoshi and Birdo, our favorite egg spitters, Baby Mario and Baby Luigi. There's some time travel shenanigans going on here, and I love it. Koopa Troopa comes back from Super Mario Kart alongside Paratroopa. Donkey Kong has Diddy Kong, making him effectively the first guest character in a Mario Kart game. Yes, the Donkey Kong and Mario universes are connected, but Diddy is the first character that's never been in the same game as Mario to be in Mario Kart, which is cool. Bowser has Bowser Jr. for some nice father-son bonding time, and of course Wario as Waluigi, the one major Mario character who will never be in Smash. But this is the first game to actually have some unlockable characters, that being Toad and Toadette, which is half weird, half really cool. Toad is kind of a lame unlockable, but Toadette is really interesting since this game is her official debut. They made her just because Toad needed a partner, so I think having a brand new character be unlockable was pretty smart. And finally, the most iconic duo in the history of fiction, PD Piranha and King Boo. This is also the first game to let you pick your cart, which dramatically changes your stats, and it typically changes depending on which characters you select, though you can still pick some that don't apply to either. Now for the cups, we only have the Mushroom, Flower, and Star Cups to start, but we unlock the Special Cup later, and we're back to only 16 courses instead of 20. But now we finally start the race, and yep, this is about what you would expect, racing around the track and using items to have the most points at the end of the races. You all know the drill by this point, so what does this game do differently? Well, for starters, the graphics are a huge step up from Mario Kart 64. This is the first fully 3D game in the series, and it can look a little fuzzy, and some characters are a bit more jagged, but overall it holds up pretty well. The music has an insane amount of energy to it, which really adds to the mayhem, and like I said, there's 2 characters per cart. The character in front drives while the character in the back uses items. The thing is, you can switch characters by pushing the Z button, and each character can hold a different item. This means you can hold 2 items at once. The last 2 games let you hold an item behind you and then grab another, but here you can switch between them at will. So if you want to save an item for later, like a mushroom for a safer spot or a shell in case you fall behind, you can put that character in front and use it when needed. This is an awesome addition that allows for way more strategy than the earlier games. Before, it was just get an item, use it, and then keep going. Sometimes there was a bit more to it than that, but most of the time the best way to win was just use as many items as possible. But here you can really think about whether or not you want to use a certain item without feeling penalized for it, since if a second item box comes up, you can just switch to get it. Plus you can get 2 items at once, either by grabbing one of these double item boxes or by switching characters at the right moment. The only downside is you can no longer hold items like shells or banana peels behind you for protection. As soon as you hit the button, you drop it behind you, so if you want to block incoming shells, you need to use it right before it hits you, which doesn't always work.
This is part of what makes Double Dash so unique. Using 2 characters instead of just one isn't just a fun cosmetic, it is a massive effect on the gameplay, which makes things a lot more hectic, but also more strategic and all around more fun. But that's not even getting into the items themselves, which is where things really start to get crazy.
We have all the items that were in Super Circuit, plus the return of the blue shell, yay, but we have tons of brand new ones. And this is where the second defining aspect of Double Dash comes into play. Each pair of characters has their own specific item that only they can use. Every other game in the series, which character you pick mainly comes down to which one you like. They do vary in stats, but for the most part, it's purely a cosmetic thing. But here there's legit strategy in which characters you select, since they determine what special items you'll be able to use. If you want one item in particular, you stick to a specific team, but if you want 2 different items, then you mix and match to your heart's content. This is why I picked different characters, since I like having access to 2 specific items instead of 1, since most of these things are busted. Mario and Luigi have fireballs, which shoot in a line of 5. Peach and Daisy have hearts that spin around them and steal items if you drive into them. Yoshi and Birdo throw eggs that home in on enemies and break into 3 more items on the ground that can help or hurt. Baby Mario and Baby Luigi have the Chain Chomp, which is easily the best one, since it automatically pulls you forward at high speed for a bit while knocking out opponents, though you lose it if you get hit. Koopa Troopa and Paratroopa have the Triple Shells. Yes, these are character exclusive this time, and they juggle them instead of spinning around you, so there's no protection. Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong have a giant banana peel that breaks into 3 small banana peels after it gets hit. Bowser and Bowser Jr. have a Bowser Shell, which is basically a giant green shell. Wario and Waluigi have bombs that go boom, and Toad and Toadette have golden mushrooms, once again an older item that was made character specific. PD Piranha and King Boo don't have their own items, but instead they're the only ones that can use every item. The character specific items are one of the best additions to this game. They really add a whole new level of strategy to which characters you pick. If you want to focus on offense, then pick the fireballs or triple shells. If you want to play more defensively, then pick the hearts or giant banana peel. And if you want to cheese the game as much as possible, pick the gold mushroom or chain chomp. There's a lot of options at your disposal, which makes the game much more replayable and infinitely more chaotic. And what's really cool is that some of them even look different depending on the character using them. Mario's fireballs are orange, while Luigi's are green, and Yoshi's eggs are green, while Birdo's are pink. And thankfully both Koopas get access to the green and red triple shells, because otherwise Paratroopa would be vastly superior to Koopa Troopa. I'm really surprised that this is the only game to try character-specific items. Sure, Super Mario Kart did have them, but that was only for the CPUs, and it wouldn't make much sense in later games due to how many characters there are, but it's still a really fun idea, and a huge part of what makes Double Dash stand out.
Double Dash is easily one of the most chaotic games in the Mario Kart series, largely due to the items, but also largely due to the controls.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have finally found it. The first ever Mario Kart game to not control poorly. I mean, obviously it's not as good as the later games in the series, but this is actually playable, which is more than I can say for some of the previous titles. The drifting actually feels good here. It's an effective way to make sharp turns as quickly as possible. You can do it for more than 3 seconds without crashing into a wall or plummeting to your death, and if you wheel the joystick properly, you can get small speed boosts, which make it so much more satisfying to do. Everyone says the GameCube controller was made for Smash Bros, but I say it is truly perfect for Mario Kart. So the turning is easily the best the series has seen at this point, but the physics on the other hand are ridiculous. This is easily the fastest game in the series. Everything feels extremely bouncy, and the movement can be pretty sensitive. It seems really slippery if you're used to the newer games in the series, but you get the hang of it after a while. And it honestly can lead to some pretty cool tricks and shortcuts. Most Mario Kart games, if you even slightly go off the edge of the track, gets a death sentence, but here you can actually save yourself if you're going fast enough or turn just the right way. You don't want to get too carried away though, since if you're not careful, it's pretty easy to fall off the track. So these controls take some time to get used to, but once you do, these courses can be really satisfying to master. Speaking of which, this game also has easily the best track selection we've seen so far. There's not a single one in here that reaches the low points of the previous games, and the high points are some of the best in the entire series. The Mushroom Cup opens with Luigi's Circuit. It may seem like your typical starting course, but in the higher difficulty, you can actually collide with racers going in the opposite direction. This easily makes this one of the best starting courses in the series, since it serves as a good introduction in the lower difficulty, while also allowing for something more unique on the higher ones. Peach Beach is pretty simple, but nevertheless enjoyable. You're on a beach very clearly inspired by Super Mario Sunshine, even down to having cataquacks that launch you into the air. But then we reach Baby Park, the single most love it or hate it track in Mario Kart history. Double Dash was the first game in the series to allow for varying lap numbers between courses, and this one takes full advantage of that. It is literally just a small oval with no hazards whatsoever, but because of how small it is, it goes on for 7 laps. This place right here is the living embodiment of chaos. You'll be passing racers in every possible position and have all kinds of items flying everywhere, no matter where you are on the track, and I love it. You never know what's gonna happen in Baby Park, and while you can get skilled at it, the challenge comes from avoiding all the massive items that get hurled everywhere, which makes it one of the most hilarious and fun tracks in the entire series. Some people may loathe that chaos, but I live for it. And then we end with Dry Desert, one of the lamest tracks in the game. It is a generic desert course. You got some pokies and a sand pit to avoid, but that's it. It's not awful to drive on, it's just boring.
This is the equivalent of going through an obstacle course, where the second to last challenge is all kinds of stuff getting thrown at you from every possible direction, and then the last one is just going through a door.
The Flower Cup opens with Mushroom Bridge, a large bridge leading into a road with a bunch of cars. It's like a less cramped version of Toad's Turnpike, which makes it much better. Plus, there's a shortcut you can take on the bridge that's extremely hard to nail. Mario Circuit, I don't know why, but I am insanely bad at this one. It's just so windy and has these giant ching chomps and these piranha plants that chomp at you. Not a fan. Now, Daisy Cruiser is possibly the best in the game. You're on a giant ship and to dodge the pool, avoid these sliding tables, you can go down in the brig, which gives you a double item box and then blast you out. I love this track. It's so creative and so much fun. And then Waluigi Stadium is like Wario Stadium from Mario Kart 64, but good. It's a pretty hard track due to all the turns and ramps, but if you can nail it, it's pretty exciting. Now for the Star Cup, we have Sherbet Land, which is easily the worst track in the game. The ice physics are annoying, and there's way too many of these freezies, which encase you in a block of ice, making you completely immobile. This track stinks. Mushroom City is another road level, but this time in a city, and there's a bunch of paths you can take to reach the end, which is pretty fun. Yoshi Circuit is going around an island in the shape of Yoshi. There aren't really any obstacles aside from a bunch of turns, but it's still pretty solid, and has some fun cosmetics, like a Yoshi Copter. And finally, DK Mountain, which is awesome. You blast out of a giant barrel cannon to the peak, and then go tumbling down the mountain, avoiding boulders, a giant crack, and a creaky bridge at the end. This whole thing feels like a roller coaster, and it's up there with Baby Park and Daisy Cruiser as one of my absolute favorites in the game. And thankfully, they prevented the degenerates from getting some Princess Upskirt action. Being the Star Cup on 100cc unlocks the Special Cup, which starts with Wario Coliseum. Yeah, this one's okay, I guess. You're just kind of going around in a large cage. It's pretty generic and only 2 laps instead of 3 due to how long it is. Not awful, but not one of the best. Dino Jungle. I don't like this one. Not only is it painfully generic and the only dinosaur is dodging the Apatosaurus's feet and face, but this bridge early on is insanely annoying and really easy to fall off of in the higher difficulties, and these geysers are really annoying too. We then begin a new tradition for the Mario Kart series of ending with Bowser's Castle right before Rainbow Road. The other games had Bowser Castles, but the 2D ones had 3 or 4 of them, and 64 was always the end of the Star Cup. From here on, they're the second to last one of the Special Cup. Anyways, this one's pretty good. You got some thwomps to dodge, fire bars, a bunch of turns, and a giant Bowser statue spinning fireballs, which is cool. And finally, Rainbow Road, which is one of the easier ones in the franchise, but it's still fun. You got some speed boosts, a cool little elevator, and stars will sometimes land on the track, which you can grab. That's awesome.
Overall, Double Dash has a fantastic selection of tracks. There's a couple of duds here and there, but the majority are either pretty solid or super fun to play, though I will admit the enjoyability levels can fluctuate when going through everything.
Double Dash easily has the most amount of unlockables in the entire series. Just about every single cup will give you something new. Most of them just unlock new carts, but there are a few exceptions. Like I said, the 100cc Star Cup unlocks the Special Cup, and the 100cc Special Cup unlocks Toad and Toadette. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can go for in this game, but actually doing that can be pretty rough at times. I'd say Double Dash is overall easier than the previous 3 games due to being much better designed, but that doesn't mean it's free from garbage. The item balance in this game is ridiculous, which can be really fun, but it can also be really frustrating. The AI doesn't get cheating speed boosts, though there are some moments where it feels like they should not be catching up to you, and there were a lot of moments where they threw a red shell backwards at me instead of forward at the player in first. Okay, they are clearly targeting you when it comes to that. And this was the first game in the series to remove continue, so if you do worse than fourth, you can't just try again. Either move on to the next race or have to restart the whole cup. Needless to say, the single player options in this game can be a bit rough, but the multiplayer is some of the best in the series. All the stuff I said about how chaotic and fast this game is can be applied here, which makes it easily one of the most epic multiplayer experiences in video game history. Going through these courses against your friends while using these giant items is insane and so much fun. And there's even a mode that lets 2 players control one cart. One player drives while the other guns. It's neat, but I'd rather just play standard multiplayer. But this does allow for one amazing feature, and that's LAN play. So you could connect up to 4 GameCubes with 16 players total, and that sounds like it would be insanely fun. But even that's not getting into the battle mode. This game might have my favorite battle mode in the series. We actually have 3 modes this time instead of just 1. There's Balloon Battle, which is the same as how it was previously, and it's just as fun. Then there's Shine Thief, where you have to grab a shine sprite and hold on to it as the timer goes down, and whoever has it when it reaches 0 wins, but it only goes down when someone is holding it, and getting hit throws it away and adds 5 seconds on the timer. On the bigger stages, this isn't that great, but the smaller ones where there's nowhere to hide make it pretty hectic. But easily the best mode is Ba-Bomb Blast. Each player uses nothing but bombs, and you can hold up to 5 per character, which makes for 10 per cart. Then chuck as many as possible at your opponent, and whoever scores 3 or 4 points first wins, but getting hit causes you to lose one. This mode is pure chaos, and it is freaking awesome. Chasing down the others and trying to decide whether or not you lob a bomb forward for an instant explosion, drop it back for a delay, or even holding up to try and snipe them from across the entire stage is so much fun. There's explosions happening constantly, and sometimes you'll hit each other at the same time. I call this the old back and forth. And part of what makes these so great is the awesome stages. There's GameCube, a giant floating GameCube in space, which leaves you with nowhere to hide. Cookie Land, a small arena made of cookies, which is kinda cute. Block City, a successor to Block 4, which has some dead ends that make it pretty fun. And my personal favorite, Pipe Plaza, which has these pipes that warm you up to an elevated steel rate. There's also 2 unlockable stages, Luigi's Mansion, based on the titular game, which is the biggest map and has tons of paths, and Tilt-A-Cart, which just tilts as you drive.
And that should be everything. Oh, wait, no, I almost forgot. This is the first game in the series to give you the option of watching a replay of a race as soon as it's over. And they also changed how the starting boost works, where instead of holding the A button right after the 2, you have to mash it as fast as possible as the numbers count down, and it is extremely picky. Well, I guess it's time for 150cc.
Well, the Mushroom Cup was fairly easy and unlocks Luigi's Mansion. Flower Cup had a few close calls, but overall not too bad. Now, the Star Cup was pretty freaking brutal, and honestly, a decent chunk of that was due to the worst track in the game. I already hated Sherbet Land, but this whole mess made it even worse. Thank God time counts as a win, so I finally got it. But the Special Cup, Jesus Christ, this is ridiculous. I swear if you fall off even once, you are not winning. And what is up with the bouncing? Almost every time I crash into another racer, it sends me flying, and 9 out of 10 times I go off the edge. What is going on here? Whatever, after all that, I finally made it to the end, and oh come on, a freaking blue shell! Why do these things never help me? I seriously spent almost 2 hours trying to beat the Special Cup. I've had enough, let's finally beat this. First race, I got second. Not great, but I'll take it. Second race, still got second. This does not look good. Third race, I actually managed to win, and oh hell yeah, the team ahead of me got 6th. Okay, I got this in the bag. I just gotta get at least 3rd place, and then I went...
I feel better now.
Booyah! Take that! Got second, but I'm way in the lead. Just gotta be super careful, and I got 4th place, but I still won. Thank God I have had it up to here with that cup. But that's not even the end of it. Beating the Special Cup on 150cc unlocks the All-Cup Tour, a giant marathon of every single track in the game. You always start with Luigi's Circuit and end with Rainbow Road, but everything else is random every single time. And this honestly isn't as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Because you go through so many races, you have a lot more room for error than the standard cups. Normally, if you get anything lower than 5th place, you're screwed unless you get lucky and the computer gets left behind. But here, you can get last place once or maybe even twice and still come out on top. Because of this, I beat it with all 3 engine classes on my first attempt. 50cc I didn't even try and won every race. 100cc I got 3rd or 4th a couple of times but still came out on top, and 150cc I was all over the place, but even with that, I managed to win. Hell, I got 1st on Rainbow Road through sheer luck. Beating 50 and 100cc are the only parts that don't unlock anything, but beating 150cc unlocks Mirror Mode, which is the same thing as Extra Mode from Mario Kart 64 with the tracks being reversed, only this isn't 100cc, it's 150cc. Seriously, this thing was already hard enough, but then you had to go ahead and make it even harder, and you need to beat the Flower and Star Cups to unlock Tilt-A-Cart and PD Piranha and King Boo. Bang, bang, slap, boom, blam. God, that sucked. But now I have a new title screen, so I'm done.
Conquered. Mario Kart Double Dash is freaking awesome. It is the earliest game in the series that not only holds up, but it really holds up. The 2 characters per cart and character-specific items really make it stand out in a great way. So there's much more of a reason to go back to this one other than novelty or nostalgia. Combine that with some of the best tracks in the series and an awesome battle mode, and you've easily got yourself one of the greatest Mario Kart games ever. The only thing I'll knock it for is that some of the single-player stuff can be brutal. It's more forgiving than the previous 3 games, but it's still not that great. 150cc can be really unforgiving, and mirror mode just sucks. I did not have fun with that. So I wouldn't recommend going for everything, but I would recommend at least unlocking the Special Cup, because that is completely worth it. Unfortunately, my fun is over, and I need to get back to work. I took up a babysitting gig recently, but thankfully today all I have to do is take him to the park, so that should be nice and easy.